Good afternoon. My name is Paul Sears, Dean of the College of Business, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to the first Visiting Executive Community Lecture for Fall Term 2010. Our visiting lecturer today, visiting executive today is Michael Harrington. And Michael is notable for several things, which I'll try to briefly share with you in just a second. But one of the notable things about his coming as our visiting executive is that he is our first visiting executive who is not an alum of the University of Findlay. So I just want you to know that we're big enough hearted to even invite people who are not alumni of the university to share their experience and wisdom with our students. Mike is, however, on the advisory board for the College of Business, so he has evidenced a deep interest in our college and our students. He is a native of Findlay, and his dad was on the board of trustees for the university. So he's got a little orange and black blood in him, and we're pleased to have him here today with us. Michael is president of Oak Ridge Investments in Chicago. He joined the company in 2003. And he has primary responsibility for sales and marketing and is a member of their investment and executive committees. Prior to joining Oak Ridge, Mike was managing director of separately managed accounts at Scudder Investments Deutsche Asset Management, a $900 billion global asset manager. And previously to that, he was managing director of the broker-dealer division at Scudder Investments. So Mike brings with him a tremendous amount of experience and knowledge in the investment world. And we just had a nice luncheon with our students in the investment club and Mike. So if any of you in the audience are interested in investments, either as a hobby or as a potential career path, I would urge you to perhaps join the investment club and gain a little more experience and knowledge in the investment world. Michael is a graduate of Miami University with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, and from the Ohio State University with an MBA in Finance. I'm very pleased to welcome Mike to the podium, and he's going to talk about lessons learned from a 25-year career on Wall Street. Mike Harrington.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me here today in this beautiful room. Paul gave me a tour of the business school a while back, and this was a very pleasant surprise that they maintain this beautiful room here. It's great to have the opportunity to be here today to talk to all of you. As Paul said, I didn't go to the University of Findlay, but I do have a lot of connections to the university. He mentioned some of them, but I actually did go to school here at one point. I went to summer school here during one of the summers when I was in college. And I took a marketing class in the business school, so I did attend here for a while. But I want to thank you for that very warm introduction, and thank Dr. Hyland also for being my host today, and new President Fell for being so warm and welcoming to me here at the university, and the members of the investment club that I had lunch with. We had a very interesting discussion. I also had an opportunity to be on your television station this morning. With a couple of your fellow students. As Paul said, he encouraged people to join the investment club. I do think it's a great idea. Part of what I'm going to talk about is I do think there is a real need for investor education in the United States. When I hear about predatory lending, it's really, to me, an educational issue rather than a lender issue. I don't think in this day and age anybody should be subject to predatory lending, because I think through education we should understand who we're borrowing money from and how we're borrowing money, and I think the place to learn that is in school. So I'm an advocate for mandatory investor education in schools. I think it should be taught just as important as, and maybe more important in terms of the impact on your life. It's just as important as freshman English. We should be teaching it in the high schools. We should be teaching it in college. So that even if you're not going to be a professional investor, every one of you at some point in your life is going to be an investor. When you go to work, you're going to probably have a 401k plan, and you're going to be asked to pick some mutual funds. You're going to be asked to make some investment decisions. And for your livelihood, it's very important that you make good decisions. And the place to learn that is right now while you're in school. This is a great learning environment. So I highly encourage that. I also, especially women, there's only one woman on the investment club. So all of you women in here, join the investment club, because this is something that you really need to learn. Again, this is a place to learn it. I need to get my helpers here. So thank you to all the people that have been great hosts here. I also want to recognize one of the very most important people in my life, which is my mother. She's here. She taught me a lot of things. So some of the things I talk about that I learned today, I probably learned part of it from her. My sister is also here, and my good friend Ed Heminger, who's been, and my sister is a graduate of the university and very involved in the university, and my friend Ed Heminger, who's been very involved in the university over the years, along with my father. I had a brother and two sisters that graduated from the university, and my father, as Paul said, was very involved. He was chairman of the board for about 10 years, and there was a period where the university grew very rapidly. It was an experience that I think was a highlight of his life, and something that he was very proud of, and something that he talked a lot about to his kids. Not only the aspect of community service, but I think it was a very exciting place for him to work. He really enjoyed the people at the University of Findlay, and it was something that was really important to him in his lifetime. I've also enjoyed working with Dr. Sears and the the Business School Advisory Board. A lot of great programs here, a lot of great ideas. I compliment Dr. Sears for reaching out to the business community and asking for input and asking for help, and also compliment him because a lot of things we've discussed, he's actually gone and implemented them. So I think it really has made a big difference, and will in the long run, to have that interaction with the business community. Let me ask you real quick, can everybody hear me? Just want to make sure. Should have started out. Okay, good. So my title today is What I've Learned in My 25-Year Career on Wall Street. And I didn't actually work on Wall Street. I live in Chicago and work in Chicago. Wall Street's sort of a euphemism for the investment business. I've been in the investment business for 25 years, but it's been in Chicago. Wall Street's kind of interesting now because it used to be the center point for the investment universe. And it's interesting today because if you go to Wall Street, the New York Stock Exchange is still there, but very few investment firms are there anymore. Merrill Lynch is actually in Princeton, New Jersey now. The former Paine Webber, which is now UBS, is in Weehawken, New Jersey. Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, they merged together, and they're up in Westchester County. So very few firms are now on Wall Street anymore. They've kind of all spread out all over the place. But I've been in Chicago, and that's been my center for the investment universe. And Paul described a lot of my career, and I'm happy to share with you later any of those specific experiences. But I worked as a bond trader, a lot of jobs in product management where I put together investment products, mutual funds, and so forth. A lot of my responsibilities have been in sales and marketing through intermediaries. About 85% of mutual funds today are sold through banks and brokerage firms. So a lot of my career has been working with banks and brokerage firms to help them market mutual funds. A lot of my career has been in institutional marketing, institutional investing, and currently that's what I'm doing. The firm I work for, Oak Ridge Investments, is an institutional boutique. We provide investment management services to university endowments, to foundations, to municipalities. For some reason, we do really well with the nuns. We manage a lot of money for nuns. I don't know, maybe it's my Catholic upbringing, but we do well with the nuns. Probably because I snap to attention whenever I'm in the presence of a nun. But we manage a lot of money we sub-advise some mutual funds for Pioneer. They're called the Pioneer Oak Ridge Large Cap Growth Fund, Pioneer Oak Ridge Small Cap Growth Fund. So very much of an institutional background. I spent a number of years managing the cash management business at Kemper Financial Services, Scudder, and Deutsche Asset Management. One of the highlights of my career is I grew that business from $8 billion to $40 billion over a period of about 8 years, so it was a very successful business. I eventually made a proposal for a new business, which was separately managed accounts, and that's taking these institutional separately managed account concepts and bringing them to the private client market. So managing money for individuals the same way we manage it for institutions. The executive team liked it, they funded it. Unfortunately, that was around September 11th. So we got the funding, then the funding went away, and I was sort of the odd man out, and I floated around for a while, and then it was obvious time to leave, so I went to Oak Ridge, which was a really good experience for me because at that point in my life it was a big change, and to go from a very large company to a small entrepreneurial company was very exciting. And I've had a lot of fun doing that, and I've learned a lot. And so today I'm going to talk about what I've learned, and my comments will mainly be around some things I've learned about investing, some things I've learned about business management, and some things I've learned about careers, which hopefully will help everybody here. But when I look back on my career, it's been a very interesting time. There's a saying, may you live in interesting times, and I think my career has definitely been an interesting time to be in the investment business. It was a period of tremendous growth. I caught a great wave. Mutual funds, when I first got out of college, there was about $240 billion in mutual funds. There's now over $11 trillion. So I enjoyed that wave. I caught that wave and was very fortunate, and it had a big impact on my career. There's also been huge advances in technology, which for you in your lifetime and at your age you might laugh about this, but one of the big advances was the fax machine. You probably don't ever even use a fax machine, but I got to tell you, that was one of the coolest things. When the fax machine came out, we were all standing around this machine. We'd have somebody on the phone, and they'd send a document over, and next thing you know, there it was right in front of you. And then we'd send one back, and they'd call and say, I got it. And that was just so exciting. But you think about what's come out since then. You know, the internet has not been around that long, only about 10 years. And the changes and the impact on the business, the investment business, have been tremendous. The velocity of the information, the quantity of the information are really phenomenal. Things like cell phones. When the first guy at Kemper got a cell phone, it was about the size of a loaf of bread. And it was this giant thing like a football that you held on the side of his head. And it was really cool, but we didn't think it'd ever stick. Well, now cell phones are everywhere, and it's just part of our life. And the information you now have for free on your desktop computer or your iPad or your handheld device is dramatically greater than the information and the tools that I had when I worked as a trader on a trading desk 25 years ago. So that technology has had a major impact, and it's been very interesting to see that happen. I also participated in 4 mergers in my career, which has been interesting. All the financial stuff that goes with that, all the strategic stuff that goes with it, but also a lot of human drama. 3 of those mergers involved foreign companies. So that was very interesting. I traveled a lot. I've been to, for business, every state in the United States except New Mexico. I don't know why, but I got to find a client in New Mexico. I've also traveled most of Europe. I met a ton of interesting people. I've met a lot of characters, mostly good characters, but some bad. I witnessed the founding of some interesting companies: Charles Schwab, E-Trade, TD Ameritrade, Janus, Morningstar, and DST. These are companies that didn't exist very long ago and now are very successful businesses. I also watched a lot of companies go under: Kidder Peabody, Drexel Burnham, Salomon Brothers, Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Continental Illinois Bank, AIG, Kemper Insurance. Pretty amazing. One of those companies I worked for, Kemper Insurance, but I got out before they went under. So I've witnessed some pretty amazing things during that period of time, and it's a very dynamic industry, and it's been very interesting. I've been involved in some very successful business ventures. I also was involved in some failures. I've had some career highlights and some lowlights, but all along I've been learning a lot, and as I said, that's what I'm going to share with you today. I probably have about 20 things, which means on average I learned less than one thing per year. Hopefully you'll learn more than I did, but actually I learned more than that, but I'm going to keep it to about 20 things. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I know we have a lot of people here from different backgrounds, some administration, faculty, but most of my remarks are going to be addressed towards the students because you guys are paying to be here, so I think you've earned it. And the first one, so let's just get started. The first one is math. My son almost every night complains to me about math. Why do we have to do this? We don't use this. Does anybody feel that way? A lot of people feel that way. Well, let me tell you, it does matter. You're going to need to use math. If you go in the investment business, you will use it every day. I use it every day. Even if you don't, you're going to use it for your own household finances. You're also probably going to use it no matter what job you take. It really is used out there. Wall Street is really today increasingly run by the mathematicians. All these derivative securities, all this advanced risk management stuff, a lot of the things that contributed to the stock market crash, those were program trading and mathematically driven models. It's all about the math. So it really does matter. So what I learned, what do you need to know? You need to understand time value of money, present value, future value, internal rates of return. Why? Because these are the calculations you use. If you're not in the investment business, these are calculations you use for loans. You want to borrow money to buy a house, to buy a car, whatever it is, even your credit card. These are time value of money calculations. And as I mentioned, predatory lending is not something that should exist if you're educated. So I encourage you to take math classes. I encourage you to take investment classes. Learn these things so that you can manage your own money. And even if you use an advisor, you can manage your advisor. This is stuff that's very important, and you don't want predatory lending to happen to you. You also need a solid understanding of statistics. No matter what job you go into, you're going to need to understand data sets, tables, forecasts, surveys, projections, all kinds of statistical measures. And it's just really important you know this. People love to use statistics in creative ways. Any television advertisement you see, I shouldn't say any, but most have some sort of statistic in it. It's the political season right now. Talk about creative statistics. They're all using statistics to support their positions. And one of my favorite quotes, which was popularized by Mark Twain, is, "There are lies, damn lies, and statistics." So you better learn your stats so you don't get fooled. So again, I think it's something else that's better to learn in school. If you're 29 years old and you realize you didn't learn about statistics, you're not likely to go to the library and check out a statistics book. It's just really dry reading. It's really something you need to learn in school. So I encourage all of you, take an investments class. It's something you will use. Learn that time value of money calculations and take a statistics class. The second thing I learned is the vast majority of the people working in the investment business are decent, hardworking people. That would be hard to believe based upon what you see on TV and what you read in the papers right now, because Wall Street really is in the midst of a identity crisis, a credibility crisis. They made a lot of mistakes. They were right in the middle of the big stock market crash, and a lot of the nefarious characters who were in the middle of that have been well publicized. But in my 25 years, I think most of the people, the vast majority of the people, are really decent people. They're hardworking, honest, sincere. They're generally very generous. I know some of the local stockbrokers have been very involved in the university here. They tend to be leaders in their community. So they're not all bad guys. Certainly there's plenty of them. Bernie Madoff is a bad guy for the record book, but they're not all that way. Most of them are honest and hardworking, and they're serving a very valuable purpose in our society. You know, the essence of capital markets is raising money for businesses so they can buy plants and equipment and ideally hire more people and create more jobs and grow their business, and raising money for municipalities for things like water treatment facilities or schools or hospitals. And also, they're out helping investors invest their money. Those are all really good things that need to take place in our society. And they're not all out stealing, although there were enough of them that it's kind of ruined the reputation. But I just wanted to, give a personal attestation today. I just killed that word, but that most of the people are really good people, and I think Wall Street will recover and their image will recover, but they do have a credibility gap right now, and they need to do a better job. So I think, there's the Gordon Geckos type image in the movie Wall Street, and there's Bernie Madoff, but another Wall Street person, even though he doesn't work on Wall Street, is Warren Buffett. And I would submit to you today that most people are more in the lines of Warren Buffett. They're honest, hardworking people trying to do a good job, and that is what I think will prevail in the long run on Wall Street. So we do have this financial crisis. Wall Street is in the middle of it. There's the common thought is that it was all Wall Street. It wasn't. It's more complex than that. Wouldn't it be great if life was that simple? But it's not just Wall Street. They obviously played a very centralized role, and greed is not something that's a human trait that's only evident on Wall Street. Greed spreads to all parts of our society, but the crash had more to do with Wall Street. It had to do with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Ginnie Mae. It had to do with home builders who built too many homes. It had to do with home buyers who bought homes they couldn't afford. It had to do with regulators who failed, to properly regulate these entities. So it was a very complex issue that goes beyond Wall Street. But I just want to assure you, if you're thinking about a career on Wall Street, it is a good place to work, and it's mostly decent people. I did talk a little bit about the services that Wall Street provides and how critical they are, and it's very important that as a society we maintain, or as an economy, we maintain our leadership position. One of the things the United States has historically been very, very good at, and I think we still are the leaders today, is capital markets. It's one of the reasons, probably a primary reason, that we have the largest economy in the world and one of the historically fastest growing economies in the world is because we have the best capital markets. We have very efficient, very transparent, very well-functioning capital markets most of the time. When there's market crashes, obviously it's not functioning, but most of the time it is. And it's very important that we maintain that so that we can raise the money for new schools and new hospitals, and we can raise the money for new companies. Companies like Apple and Google, Microsoft, a lot of these companies didn't exist that long ago, and now they're huge employers. They've utilized the capital markets to get the money that they need to build those businesses so they can build greater products to make our lives easier and better and hire lots of people and contribute to our economy. Very important that we keep these capital markets competitive because we have a lot of competition. Companies today can raise money in Hong Kong, in Zurich, in Frankfurt, in Tokyo. All of these money centers around the world want that capital markets business. They're bidding very aggressively for it. The investors around the world, it's very much of a global investing environment where capital knows no borders. Capital will go where it can get the best returns with the least amount of friction, which means if they can't get it in the United States, they're going to go somewhere else and get it. They're going to go to emerging markets. They're going to go to China. They're going to go to India, maybe Eastern Europe, wherever it is that they can get high returns. So it's very important that we keep our capital markets functioning very efficiently or we're going to lose our leadership position. And what does that mean? Well, financial services makes up about 20% of our GDP. So it's about 1/5 of our economy is based on financial services. If we lose our leadership position, that has some far-reaching consequences for our economy and for jobs. It employs about 8 million people. It's 1 out of every 15 households has somebody working in financial services. So again, we have to be competitive. I do have some concerns. We have the new Dodd-Frank bill. Some of the people in my business call it the Dodd-Frankenstein bill, so that tells you how they feel about it. My opinion is most of it's good. It's overdue. It was overdue. I'd say the vast majority of it is good, but there are some things in that bill that really create some challenges, and I think bring into question whether or not we're going to retain our competitiveness. It did some great things like greater regulation of derivatives, greater regulation of hedge funds. Those were way overdue. It has some bad things. It makes it hard to raise capital, private capital. It changes the definition of qualified investors. So it's going to be harder for small local businesses to raise money from local investors because qualified investors have to be much more qualified than they were before. But the biggest issue and the biggest question is it leaves a lot of, even though it's 2,300 pages, there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of mandates for additional rulemaking. The SEC has to complete 70 studies by year end and come up with rules around these 70 different topics. And that's really put a freeze on the financial services industry in the United States, and one of the reasons why banks are continuing to struggle. And we have this new Financial Consumer Regulatory Board, which at this point looks like it has unlimited rulemaking authority and very little restrictions on what they can do. For my own small business, I already have 4 regulators. This would be my 5th regulator. I am really struggling to see what they may cover that I'm not already being covered either by one of these other regulators. It's going to increase the cost of doing business, definitely for my business, it will for others. The whole point behind this, again, I think overall the bill is good, but it's really important that our policymakers get this thing right, maintain the flexibility to come back and correct things that maybe weren't done right after they see how it's working or not working, so that we can retain our competitiveness. It's just really, really important. The other thing I've learned is Wall Street tends to overdo everything. The crash is a great example of that. How many people today, with the benefit of hindsight, can now look and say, hey, I saw that there was a bubble in real estate? I mean, it seems kind of obvious now. It didn't seem like it at the time, but Wall Street does tend to overdo everything. You know, Mae West used to say, you know, too much of a good thing is wonderful. Well, Wall Street kind of has that viewpoint. There's a herd mentality, they chase each other, and all the money chases the bad money until it's overdone and then it blows up. And in your lifetime already, you've seen that twice. You saw the recent crash, you also saw the tech wreck. I mean, in hindsight, it kind of seems obvious that was going to happen, but at the time it didn't. And there really is a great market psychology on Wall Street where the money all follows other money, and there's what we call momentum investors that just try to find trends. They don't really look at the fundamentals, but they find trends. And they just try to ride that trend, and that's a great trend until it turns, and then there's disaster, especially when there's lots of leverage. And that's what happened with the recent crash. Everybody was following that trend. We saw it with the tech wreck. We've seen it with LBO problems. We've seen it with prior mortgage-backed security booms and busts. Lots of booms and busts. And so the moral, and what I've learned, and the reason I bring this up, is you really need to have a healthy dose of skepticism as an investor, not get too caught up in the trends, not get too caught up in the herd mentality so that you're jumping on the bandwagon too late, right before it's ready to go off the cliff. So a little bit of contrarian thinking is really important, and to just try not to go with the crowd on everything, and just keep your wits about you. You know, one of the great mysteries of investing is, why is it that nobody wants to buy stocks after the market has gone down, but everybody wants to buy stocks when the market's really high? And it just is counterintuitive, and you would think, well, certainly disciplined professional investors would never do that, but in fact they do. And investing is a human endeavor, and when humans are involved, there's psychology. And my whole point here is you just have to be aware of that psychology and try not to make those same mistakes. So, is there anything being overdone today? Can anybody think of anything that's just super popular today that might be overdone? Gold. We talked about gold earlier. Maybe there's a bubble in gold. I don't know. It's $1,300 an ounce. It's up 30% in the last year. It's doubled in the last 3 years. It's up fivefold in 10 years. As I was talking to the investment club, unless you're a jeweler, gold doesn't do all that much for you. It's not really a productive metal. And so, you know, it can be a useful hedge against inflation. It can be, you know, it usually does well during times of uncertainty, but, you know, when that uncertainty goes away, what happens to gold? Is it going to go higher? I don't know. Gold is one possibility. How about fixed income investing? Maybe another possibility could be fixed income investing today. Since the end of 2008, investors in the U.S. have put $550 billion into bond funds. At the same time, they withdrew $70 billion from stock funds. So $550 billion is a huge amount of money, and that net swing between stocks and bonds is really remarkable. Now, let's do the math. You know, I'll pick a 2-year treasury. The yield on a 2-year treasury is less than 0.5%. It's 0.46%. If you're in the 30% tax bracket, that's 0.32%, less than 1/3% after taxes. And it's a negative 1.2% after what today is a very low rate of inflation of 1.5%. So in my opinion, it's hardly worth the effort. I think a lot of people are going to bond funds because they think they're safe, but they forget when rates go up, the value of bonds goes down. It has not really happened in a big way in 25 years. We've been in a long-term secular bull market for bonds and lower interest rates for 25 years. But this is going to turn at some point. I don't know when, but eventually it will. And people need to understand that they can lose money on their bonds. Your average long-term bond funds, there's a thing called duration. Duration will tell you how much your bonds will drop in value if rates go up 100%. The duration on an average long-term bond fund is about 10. Which means if rates go up 1%, the value of the bond fund goes down 10%. I don't think many people understand that. And with the yields at about 2% to 2.5%, that's 4 to 5 years of your interest lost when rates go up 100 basis points. The other thing in a bond fund is that the yields lag. So when rates are coming down, because you've got these bonds that you bought at higher rates, that as more money comes in, that slowly gets diluted. But the rates on bond funds today are higher than the rates that you can get in the regular bond market, so they look relatively attractive. Well, when rates start going up, those bond funds are going to take a while. The rates will continue to go down, and then eventually they'll go up. But there's a lag effect that works both ways. The lag effect now makes them look really attractive. The lag effect when rates go up is going to make them look really unattractive. People are probably going to bail out, so the principal value is going to go down. So my whole point there is be cautious on bond funds. If you have cash or some money, I would recommend short-term CDs or high-yield savings accounts. If you have extra cash, I think stocks look pretty attractive here. I'll use a John Templeton quote. John Templeton started Templeton Investments, a very famous investor. And his question, he had 3 questions. Is it better to buy stocks when prices are high or low? What do you think? Low, exactly. Are stock prices low when most people feel bad about the market or when most people feel good about the market? When they feel bad, right? So do most people feel good or bad about the stock market today? They feel bad, exactly. So I would recommend you keep that wisdom in mind when looking for investments today. You know, I have learned investing is a very complex business. It's never simple. If you think something's simple, you know, be very cautious. But there are some things to keep in mind. Diversification is a very proven concept. I've heard it described as people saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I'm amazed the sad stories I read about people who had all of their money in Enron stock, or they invested all their money with Bernie Madoff. I mean, they missed one of the basic concepts of investing, that is diversification. Very important to be diversified. Secondly, very important to understand your objectives. You know, what is it that you're investing for? Are you saving for retirement? Are you saving to buy a home? Are you saving for a college education? The way you invest really should be tied to whatever that objective is. You also need to understand your risk tolerance. How much money can you afford to lose? Can you lose? Can you handle it either emotionally or financially or both if you lose 30% of your investment? Some people thought they could until it happened, and they realized they couldn't sleep at night, or all of a sudden their dreams were shattered. So you need to ask yourself those questions and figure that out. Thirdly, if it sounds like it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. There's no such thing as a hot stock tip. If you have a buddy that gives you a hot stock tip, it's probably BS. If it turns out to be good, they probably had inside information. And they better be a good buddy, because you're going to share a prison cell with them if they catch you. But there's no such thing as a hot stock tip. There really isn't. I mean, when you get a stock tip, you got to figure out, do you have better information or an advantage against all the professional managers, all the hedge fund managers, all the people around the world that are spending full time being paid a lot of money to do this kind of investing? What makes you think your friend has a better stock idea? Hot stock ideas rarely work out. And lastly, or second to last, do your homework. There's tons of information for free on the internet. Yahoo Finance, Morningstar, there's great publications like Barron's, the Wall Street Journal, Money Magazine, even Business Week, Forbes. There's great information. There's some great financial blogs on the internet. So do your homework before you invest in something. Make sure you know what you're investing in. And then lastly, if you don't have the time or you don't have the discipline, hire an advisor. Most people do use an advisor. Most people don't have the time. Hire an advisor. I have some tips for you on how to get a good advisor. Don't be afraid to pay them. Like attorneys or doctors, you don't want a cheap one. So don't be afraid to pay them a little bit of money. One of my favorite cartoons is two homeless guys sitting in the alley, and the caption reads, "I lost it all in the crash, but I saved a fortune on commissions." You know, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Be willing to pay your advisor. But a couple of tips on that. First of all, find somebody who's reputable. In a community the size of Findlay, you can usually do it through word of mouth. But FINRA, which is the regulatory agency for brokers, has a website. You can go on that website and see if they have any disciplinary actions. See if they've had any problems, if there's been any complaints. They're required to report all that on the internet, and it's available to anybody. Secondly, seek advisors with professional credentials, CFP, which is Certified Financial Planner, CPA, CIMA, CFA. These are people that have additional education. They have continuing education requirements. They also have ethics standards, usually higher ethics standards, and a lot of things that they have to do over and above your average investor. Thirdly, find somebody you're comfortable with. Because if you really are going to get a good financial plan and good financial advice, you need to share with them more than just parts of your finances. They really need to understand your aspirations and your dreams. So make sure there's good chemistry so it's somebody you feel comfortable talking to. It may not be your friend. You may say, well, I feel comfortable working with my friend, but do you want to talk to your friend about things that maybe you'd feel more comfortable talking to somebody where you purely have a professional relationship? Fourthly, hire two advisors and use them against each other. If one recommends something, ask the other one what they think. Fifth, understand how they're paid. Are they paid through commissions? Are they paid through advisory fees, a percentage of assets? You need to understand that so you know how they might be motivated. You know, if they're paid by commissions, they're going to want you to do a lot of trading. So you need to understand that. 6, the best advisors will understand you well. If you have an advisor that does all the talking and doesn't ask any questions, they're not understanding you. They want you to understand them. That's not as important. They need to ask you a lot of questions so they tailor their advice to what your needs are. 7th, make sure you fit their practice. If it's an advisor who specializes in institutions, they may not be too thrilled about managing your $25,000. So make sure there's a good fit. 8th, a financial planning process is usually best, and that's a holistic process where they talk to you about your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, your risk tolerance, your complete financial situation, and they develop a written plan specifically for you. That's a much better program than somebody that says, I've got a great stock idea for you. We really feel strongly about Hewlett-Packard today. That's not a plan. 9th, do research. Really 9 and 10 are the same, and that's do research and use the available resources. Again, if they say, I think you should buy the Franklin Templeton Emerging Markets Fixed Income Fund, before you say yes, go out on the internet and check it out. Read the prospectus, learn a little bit about Franklin Templeton. There's great information out there. Don't automatically say yes. Ask good questions. If you're asking good questions to your advisor, they're less likely to try to pull one over on you. You know, one other thing I wanted to talk about was careers. And it's something I learned a lot about, and it's something that many of you that have worked already, you probably have learned some of these things. Most of these things you learn the hard way because you make mistakes and you try not to repeat mistakes. But I did learn a lot over the years, and I wanted to share that with you. And I have 10 of these, and it should go fairly quickly. But it begins with hard work. Every successful person I know is a very hard worker. And you know, this speaks to preparation. It speaks to discipline. It speaks to the commitment. It literally speaks to the amount of hours you put into it. I've worked 60 hours a week since I started my career, on average, 60 hours a week, sometimes longer, occasionally shorter, but my weeks are routinely 60 hours. And most of the successful people I know are working at least 60 hours. That's a lot of work. Most people say, well, you know, the company requires me to be here 36 and a half hours a week, so I'm getting in and getting out. And there's a lot of careers like that, and if that's how you want to balance your life, that's great. But if, you know, the people that do really well are working really hard, and you cannot, even entrepreneurs who do well, really well, you say, gee, she had a great idea, and she was lucky she had that idea, she put that company together. It is extremely hard work. And so you have to be committed to working hard. You have to come in earlier, you have to work a little bit longer, you have to work some weekends, you have to make sacrifices. I moved away. I delayed getting married. I delayed having kids. You know, you try to find these balance in all these things. And I'm not saying this is what you have to do, but I'm saying if you want to be very successful, this is something you have to do. You have to figure out, am I going to work hard? Am I willing to make that commitment? Am I willing to make those sacrifices? It makes it more difficult to achieve balance in your life in terms of your physical, harder to find time to exercise, your emotional side, your spiritual side. You need to balance all those out with your professional side. But if you want to be successful, no matter what you do, in business, you have to work hard. It's the same in academics. It's the same in nonprofits. It's the same in the arts. Every successful person I met in life is a very hard worker. The best actors work really hard. The best artists work really hard. They're very, very dedicated. The best athletes, if there's any athletes here, you know that. The best athletes work very hard. So that's a commitment you got to make, and that's table stakes. That's where you start. You got to be committed to working hard. Secondly, you need a high level of emotional intelligence, which technically is identified or defined as the ability to identify assess, and control one's emotions, and sensitivity and perception to others' emotions, i.e. empathy. But it really is controlling your emotions. The easiest one that I see a lot of is anger. Anger is hard to control. I'm better at it now than I was when I was young. But one of my sayings is, he who loses his temper first loses. I mean, that's a really obvious example of emotional intelligence. But it's also your ability to get along with other people, because organizations are all about the people. It's having a sense of humor. It's being able to handle adversity, to be able to handle adversity with poise, handle pressure, adapt to different situations, dealing with difficulty, empathy, etc. These are all factors in human relations, and I don't know how you teach this. I think you're learning a lot of this, a lot of these group projects and things you're involved in, and maybe you're in a fraternity and clubs and all that interaction. You know, some people say, college is such a waste of time, all we did was drink beer and have a lot of fun, but you're learning this socialization process right now. You'll continue to learn that, but this is something that's really important in terms of careers, is to be able to get along with people, communicate with people, and manage your own emotions, be perceptive about other people's emotions. At some point, you will all be involved in managing others. You kind of have to be a mind reader and find out what motivates them and understand them. And, you know, people say one thing, but they mean another thing. You're learning all that now, and it's really important in terms of your career. Thirdly is patience. And this is a tough one, especially when you're young, because you have tons of ambition, which is great, tons of motivation, which is great. But it's going to be hard for you, especially initially, to understand that not everything happens right away. And so you need to understand there's a series of steps. If you set goals, there's a small percentage of people that achieve their goals very, very quickly, but a small percentage. Most people, it takes time, and they have to go through a series of steps to achieve those goals. Not many people become managing director at the age of 28, or an executive vice president when they're 30, or have a very successful company by the time they're 30. It does happen, and by all means, go for it. But if it doesn't happen for you right away, be patient and understand that you have to take these steps to get there. And it's not always a direct line. You may have to endure a bad boss. You may have to endure, a bad assignment. You may have some things that don't go completely right for you. The people who are successful, they endure those, they manage through it. The ones that fail are the ones that sort of implode. They're like, things aren't going the way I want them to do. I want them to, and they panic, they implode, whatever. Usually, if you're patient, these things are work through. Which leads to another point, is that adversity actually creates opportunity. So if you have adversity, people often think, well, I'll get judged or measured by how well I do when things are going really well. It's the exact opposite. You really will get measured by how well you do when things are going poorly. If your boss gives you a lousy assignment and you freak out, that's it, you're done. If you say, you know what, this isn't exactly what I want to do, I understand the importance of it, I'm going to go at this with the best attitude and I'm going to do a really good job for you, they're going to say, you know what, that's somebody that I want as part of my team, and that's somebody who's promotable, and that's somebody who shows leadership. I found in my life I had the best opportunities for advancement, I made the most money, and the best things happened to me when things were going really bad. Like mergers. When everybody's freaking out and saying, I think I'm going to lose my job and I got to go out and find another job, I looked at that and said, that's an opportunity. I'm going to help these people make sure this merger is successful. And I'm going to stand up and step forward and be a leader and make this thing work. In years where the business wasn't going great, bonuses were terrible, people were quitting, they're saying, I got a lousy bonus, I quit. I said, you know what, let's make the business better, and next year we'll get better bonuses. Let's fix the problems in our business, make the business better. And that sort of attitude has served me really, really well. So if something bad happens to you in your job or your career, you've got two choices. One is you can say, this is really terrible, woe is me, and sort of self-implode. The other is to say, this is great because I can really show what I'm made of, and I can really rise above this and impress the people that I'm a winner and I'm somebody that they want to have around here. So that's really important. So view adversity as opportunity. The other is find a mentor. Really important to find a mentor. There's books written about this. I could talk for a long time about this topic alone. But the one point I want to make is just find a mentor. Find somebody that's older, more experienced, at a higher rank than you, that you trust, that can help guide you in your career, help you make good decisions, help you, ideally it's somebody in your senior executive management, your company, when somebody says, who can we get to do this? Who's good at this? They say, oh, I got Bob, or I've got Sue over here. You know, I can't tell you how many situations I've seen where major promotions were that simple. Conversely, I've seen situations where they've said, have you ever had any problems with Catherine? Yeah, she's really difficult. Well, we're laying people off. Let's get rid of her. It was that simple. I've seen it also where someone said, hold on a sec. I know Catherine. Catherine's very capable. She's very competent. You know, her mentor stood up and said, no, you can't get rid of her. She's fantastic. So you need to nurture those kinds of relationships. Ideally, it's in your own company. It can be outside your company. But somebody you trust, somebody that you can rely on, somebody can give you some guidance, somebody with experience. And it's just really, really important. If you have more than one, it's even better. 6, I talked about catching the wave. If you can get into a business or an organization that's on a big wave, I'm so lucky I got into mutual funds because, you know, a rising tide raises all boats, and I'm mixing my metaphors here, but I rode that wave for 25 years, and it's made a huge difference for me versus some of my friends who went to work in other industries that have really struggled for 25 years. And so there are a lot of opportunities that were made available to me just by being part of a growth industry. And, you know, it's interesting, I was watching Bill Gates on television a couple weeks ago, and they were asking him, you know, what was it that contributed to his success? And he mentioned luck. You know, so here's the wealthiest man in the world that built a just incredible company. And he said it was luck. He said he was lucky to have been born and be young at a time when microprocessors were evolved. So here's a brilliant man who built a brilliant company and made unbelievable amount of money. And he said it was luck. He said he was also lucky to have a passion for programming. So it was luck, but guess what? Bill Gates also caught a wave. He was really in the right place at the right time. Easier said than done. It's hard to catch a wave. I would suggest that 70 billion baby boomers, not 70 billion, 70 million, sorry. 70 million baby boomers are about to retire. And they, in their lifetime, have influenced everything. So what is it the baby boomers are going to influence when they retire? And that's going to be some waves. Technology, there's technology, this huge wave in technology is not going to end. There's just some incredible technology companies, incredible technology breakthroughs that are going to provide some tremendous career waves. But if you can catch a wave, it can make all the difference. Another point is the need to add value. This is going to sound kind of obvious, but the people who do the best in all the companies I've worked at and my friends who've done the best, they add value. So they're making money for the company, they're selling something, they're building something, they're developing something, they're executing. These are people that are making things happen. The ones that do poorly are the ones that are along for the ride. And you can go along for the ride and survive for a long time, but the ones that do really well, they make a difference, they execute, they get things done. We love to hire people. My whole life, I love to hire people that can get things done, that can make things happen. It's a great skill to have. People that are just industrious and they have ingenuity and they're creative and they just figure out how to get things done. You can ask them to do anything and they get things done. And it's not just, you know, it's not a trait. You don't need to be in business school to be this kind of person. One of our most productive people was an English major and she just figures out how to get things done. You can ask her to do anything and eventually she'll figure it out, even if it's outside of her area of expertise. So she adds value. So guess what? When it's time to promote people and pay bonuses, she gets promoted. She gets the bonuses. You know, if we have to lay people off because she's adding value, she's not getting laid off. Sales is the easiest part. You look and say, who's producing? but you have to be productive in order to be successful. Eighth is communication skills. You need to be able to communicate. I can tell you, I'm a hiring manager. Most hiring managers are about my age. It drives me crazy when I get grammatically incorrect emails because it shows that people don't care. And I know with texting and things like that, it's sort of, it's not as important, but with business communications, you really need to be grammatically correct. You need to have spelling correct. If you write a report, it has to be well written. Public speaking, presentations. We probably meet with 200 senior managers a year from 200 different companies. Every single one of them is a good communicator. They have to be able to get their point across. They have to be able to communicate. Otherwise, they're not going to get to the top end of the company. But the good news is this is stuff you can learn. You can learn that right here at the university. You can take presentation classes. You can take acting classes. You can take writing classes. So I encourage you to take as many of those as you can because it really is important. Number 9 is embrace the golden rule. Everybody knows the golden rule. Treat people with respect or treat people the way you want to be treated. Very important. I can't tell you how many people I used to deal with that were receptionists or clerical people that are now in positions where they can decide whether they're going to buy my product or get rid of me. They become purchasing managers. They become VPs. So I try to treat everybody with respect. I think you get more respect if you treat people with respect. I've seen other people that have a different philosophy. They feel like different people are beneath them or whatever, and they don't do as well over time. The other golden rule is he who has the gold rules. So you're going to have your boss tell you to do something. You're not going to want to do it. You're going to disagree with them. I see people that disagree with their boss and they don't let it go, and it doesn't work. Eventually the boss gets tired of that, and they say, you know what, I've had it, that person's gone, or they don't get the bonus, they don't get the promotion. The smarter way to do it is to argue your case the best of your ability, but also recognize when it's time to move on and recognize your responsibility at the end of the day is to implement what it is that your boss made the decision on. And that approach will do much better than if you're one of those people that just says, I think this is dumb, I disagree with this. Again, it's the golden rule. He has the gold rules. And lastly, enjoy your success. Career is more of a journey rather than a destination. So you have these goals, and ideally you'll meet these goals, but meeting that goal is a small part. The journey towards that goal is the big part. So it's really important to enjoy that and appreciate it. It goes fast. It seems like yesterday I was sitting in a room like this as a college senior. Right? That time does go fast. You're only going to be a VP for the first time, one time in your life. So celebrate and enjoy those moments. And ideally, you'll have more senior VP, EVP, managing director, president kind of moments. But enjoy your success and your accomplishments because it's. I've seen people that don't. I've had people that got promoted to VP, and the first thing they said is, yeah, this is good, but when am I going to be senior VP? And my response was, go home, tell your wife you made VP, go out to dinner and celebrate. Have fun. This is a really good thing that happened to you. And then, next week let's talk about senior VP, but please enjoy your success. So, I've shared with you a lot of things today, some about investments, some about business, some about careers. Hopefully you found it useful. I've learned a lot. The good thing is I'm still learning. I still have quite a few years left in me, so I plan to learn more. I know from talking to my father, he said learning is a lifetime endeavor, so I plan to learn a lot more. I hope you guys have great careers in whatever it is you choose to do. You're at a great school, a great educational community here. And again, I'm just really flattered to have the chance to come up here and share things with you and spend some time with you. And I hope I said something that everybody, each and every person in here finds valuable. So thanks. I'll be around for some questions if anyone wants to ask any questions. I'll tell you, just to warm things up, you can ask me anything, but I find that people that are potential mentors are flattered. I don't think you approach them and say, I want you to be my mentor. You approach them in what I would call informational interviewing and just say, I'd like to ask for your advice. Most people are flattered to give their advice. And most, especially in big companies, managers are evaluated. One of the skills that they're expected to have and they're evaluated on is talent development. Can you develop people? Can you identify good people and bring them along and develop the future generation of leaders for this company? So my advice on that is the best way to get a mentor is to ask. If you say, will you be my mentor, that sounds a little overwhelming. They might say, ooh, what's that? I don't really want to be your mentor. But if you say, I'd like to ask you for advice. I have a question. I have a career question for you, or I've got a tricky situation. I'm not quite sure how to handle this. If you were in my situation, what would you do? How would you handle this? And build the relationship that way. Also, it's two-way street. You need somebody you can trust. They need to be able to trust you. So if they say you need to be confidential about this, or I've had people that ask me for advice. I give them advice, which I think is really good, obvious advice, and they do the opposite thing. I've seen my one guy I'm his mentor, he keeps saying I'm his mentor, Dan Waldron. He went to work for my old company, Deutsche Asset Management. He left a good job to go to work for a company I just quit. And he said, I got this great opportunity over there, should I go to work there? I said, well, Dan, I just quit there. I don't think so. I think it's a bad company. They had told him all the things that were going wrong there and why I thought it was a flawed management team and business model. Well, 2 weeks later, I see the announcement he went to work there. Well, he lasted 6 months. And all the bad things that were going to happen happened to him. And then he was out of work for 2 years. So part of building this relationship is you may have to take some advice that you're not, 100% sure in, but it works both ways. Yes, sir. Sure. The question was the current mortgage situation and where's that headed? And it's a disaster. I mean, I think I read that there's 6 million homes foreclosed on, another 4.5 million in the process. It's been going on now for 3 years. It's, it eventually get worked out. My concern as a father is it's going to probably make it harder for you people and the next generation to buy homes. The one that really bothers me are these strategic defaults where people who can pay have chosen not to pay. It's very tragic and sad for people to lose their homes, but clearly there were people that bought homes they couldn't afford. And I kind of find it interesting when they talk about, you heard me talk about predatory lending. I don't think that should happen in our society. I think we should have consumers who are educated enough through school, public education, that understand that interest rates go up and down, that understand how term loans work, that understand how amortization works, that understand household budgeting, that understand, the concept of scenario analysis. What happens if I lose my job? What happens if my spouse loses her job? How does that impact our personal finances? The importance of saving, the importance of having, one of the really important career advice that I got years ago is save enough money so if you find yourself in a really bad situation at your job, you can quit. If you find where your morals or your ethics are going to be violated, you're in a tricky situation, or you're in a situation where you're so furious with your boss or whatever, you don't know what to do, you should, this advice I got from a professor, he said, always try to have enough savings that you can leave your job if you need to. And what that did for me is I always quit. With the benefit of hindsight, I made good decisions when I quit, but I didn't feel that way at the time. But if it gave me an attitude about working too, that I could quit, and that changes the dynamic, totally changes the dynamic. If you don't need that job to make the next mortgage payment, then your dynamic with your employer changes quite a bit. It empowers you, and it's really important. And debt can disempower you. It's too much debt disempowers you because you're saying, if I miss one paycheck, they're going to take my car away. So you just need to be prudent about it and have common sense and do some scenario analysis and say, what happens if I lose my job? What happens if I get sick? Do I have enough savings? Do I have a cushion?
You know, my career has been mostly on Wall Street or in the investment world, stocks and bonds, but there are other investments that you all can consider as part of your diversified portfolio of assets. And real estate is one of those assets. And the crisis in the mortgage market has created some real opportunities for some folks. Right now, today, mortgage rates are at historic lows. Never been lower in history. 4.25% is a going rate for a 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. And I read in the paper last weekend a house in Toledo that sold for $68,000 3 years ago was just bought through foreclosure for $9,600. So somebody, may have gotten a pretty good deal and perhaps financed that purchase with historically low cost money. So there's always opportunities. You just got to know where to look, and that's part of the.
That's a really good point. There's opportunity. Yeah, somebody's buying those houses.
From your studies, from your reading, look for opportunities. Are there any other questions?
I saw a hand back here.
All right.
Yes, sir.
If you're just starting out, what would be your best advice for an investment?
Sure. The question is, if you're just starting out, what's the best advice for investment? I think the main thing is early and often. So congratulations if you're starting out. That's great. It doesn't so much matter where you're putting the money as the fact that you're saving money because you're young, and the power of compounding. The money you put away today, especially if it's something you're trying to save for retirement, or maybe it's to save for a home, compounding that money over 20, 30, 40, 50 years, even if you put a small amount away today, can be a huge amount of money down the road. If I was in my late teens, early 20s, I had money, I'd put it in stocks. Going back to the John Templeton questions, stocks look pretty attractive now because nobody really wants them. And the potential return on stocks, I think over the next 5, 10, 15, whatever your time horizon, if you have more than 5 years, it looks really attractive. When I graduated from college, interest rates were 18%, unemployment was 10.6%, mortgages were 16%. So we had a disaster of an economy then. Stock market now, 25, 30 years later, is up tenfold. Paul gave you the numbers on interest rates. Real estate prices are down 30%, but I guarantee you they're up a multiple of what they were when I was, 22 years old. So time horizon is a beautiful thing to have, but the main thing is to invest. Start early. I would recommend stocks. If it's a small amount, maybe an index fund, S&P 500 index fund, and just chip away, $100, $200, whatever you can afford each month. Put more money in. If you have a tax-deferred account, an IRA, when you go to work, it'd be a 401k. That's even better because you don't have to share it with the government until you withdraw it. Roth IRA, maybe it's better now. You're in a really low tax bracket or probably a zero tax bracket if you're working part-time. Put it in a Roth IRA. It's tax-free for the rest of your life, which is fantastic.